Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Return Missionary Next Chapters podcast. I am your host, Sid Bassett. Today we sit down with David Sturt, a former mission president, corporate executive, best-selling author, and a longtime leader in the field of employee recognition and workplace culture. In the context of business, David explains what helps ordinary people do extraordinary things. Born in England and raised in South Africa, David served his first mission in Texas and later with his companion Stacy when they presided over the Nairobi, Kenya mission during a period of remarkable growth and conflict. David reflects on the power of positive recognition, meaningful work, and the wisdom of taking life one step at a time. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sid. It's great to be here.
Well, you have a very interesting beginning. You were born in England, and then early in your life, you moved to Cape Town, South Africa, and it was there where your parents were converted to the church. Can you tell us about those early years of your life?
You know, it was a great place to grow up. As a kid, you don't really have anything to compare it to, and so, but it was wonderful. We lived in Cape Town. Cape Town's a beautiful city. I have 3 siblings, and my grandparents lived on a farm about an hour and a half away, and so we would go there for Christmas holidays and anytime we could, and it was big and they grew all kinds of citrus and grapes. And then there was a river that flowed all the way back up deep into the mountains that had pretty good fishing. And so I spent time with my dog, and I'd go up as a young boy with my fishing rod and spend hours up on the river. And, there were snakes and baboons and, crazy stuff, but, it seemed kind of normal back then. And so it was pretty adventurous in those kinds of ways. And school was strict, and we got caned when we stepped out of line, which I did a few times, and so it was a great place to grow up, and a wonderful family.
I know our listeners are thinking, okay, being caned and snakes and baboons, there's no way to normalize that, David. I'm sorry. That's not a life that most of us have grown up with. But it sounds like with a rod in your hand, that was a great way to live. So did you have any siblings that would go with you, or you're just on your own enjoying nature and life?
Yeah, I was a bit of a shy kid, and I didn't mind spending time alone, and so I just grabbed the dog. And I think back now, and would I let my kids do that? But my parents were comfortable and taught us pretty well about basics to avoid and how to stay safe, and so no, I'd be miles away from the farmhouse, and I had my dog, and he was a good dog, and he would kind of watch out for me as well. And so I never felt unsafe. And probably from the time I was about 8 or 9, 10, 11, those were great years. Sometimes I'd go with my dad, and he'd kind of show me further up the river and where the best fishing was and things like that. And so I just have great memories of just spending time outdoors, and it was wonderful.
So you were baptized at the age of 8, even though your parents were converts. Tell us about this journey toward going on a mission. Did you always want to serve a mission?
Yeah, in Cape Town, my parents often had the missionaries over for, you know, dinner on Sundays and sometimes to help out. And so we interacted quite a lot. And I remember, seeing the full range of missionaries, from those that were hard workers and focused to those who wanted to lounge around their house, and the whole range. But I always had a respect for them and a desire to experience what they experienced. And so that just gradually, I think, layered into me over the years. I just felt like that was something I wanted to do. And yeah, it was an expectation, but I didn't feel any pressure. I just felt like that's something I wanted to experience. And so I'd always planned on it. I don't think I ever had a time where I didn't think I would go. Um, we all have our personal spiritual journeys, and that came with some work, but I looked forward to it. And I had been around enough missionaries over the years that I felt like felt familiar, and again, something important and something valuable that I should absolutely do.
And I presume your parents were supportive of that along the way? Yeah.
Very much so. When they were converted, they were like the anti-Nephi Lehis in the Book of Mormon. These are just salt of the earth, awesome people that just jumped in with both feet, really had to change their friend group. Their friend group kind of disowned them a little bit, and the parents weren't excited about their having joined the church, and so they jumped in with both feet, and I have huge respect for them, and I think some of those feelings and gratitude for finding the restored gospel of Jesus Christ permeated our home, and I felt that too.
Apologies for asking. Are your parents still alive?
My mother passed away a number of years ago. My dad is 98. He's still alive and going strong. I play golf with him every week, and
Oh my
he's
goodness.
uh, he's still strong, which we're grateful for.
98 and playing golf still. I feel small again for other reasons. That's amazing. Good for him. I hope he gets a chance to hear this. Good job, Dad. Okay, so you get your call and you're going to Texas. Being a Texas kid myself, that must have been shocking.
Yeah, I was very surprised. I thought, given that I could still speak Afrikaans. South Africa is was bilingual at the time, so you needed to learn Afrikaans, and so I thought it was likely I might go back to South Africa, or I had studied French for a couple of years, Spanish for a couple of years, and felt like an international sort of citizen, and so I just
Yeah.
assumed it would happen internationally. So when I got my call, I was very surprised and didn't know much about Texas, but it was perfect for me. It really was. A lot of missionaries say that, and I can say that with full genuineness that it was a great place for me to go and learn. I'd only been in the country for what, 5 years by that point, and so I still felt like it was a bit of a foreign mission for me, even though I was now living in the United States. And I love Texas. I absolutely the people were incredibly friendly, and that being said, it was the buckle of the Bible Belt. And
Yeah.
we had lots of interesting discussions and conversations along the way, but it was a great experience for me.
Mm.
I had a fantastic mission president, and his first question he asked me when we landed off the plane and he greeted us, he looked into my eyes as he shook my hand. He said, "Elder, how's your faith?" And that just kind of floored me. I wasn't expecting that. I thought, "Oh, did you study the discussions? Did you pass them off in the MTC? Are you ready to work hard?" All of the things that were in my mind, but I didn't expect that question, and that was probably the biggest theme that that dominated my mission experience, was that learning to exercise faith, and that blessed my life incredibly on mission and some of the experiences I had then, but also laid a really powerful foundation for me after mission.
As a mission president at the same time as me, what the doctrine of Christ is. It all starts with faith, and it is sort of the foundation, that faith in Jesus Christ. And so your mission leader obviously knew early on that's what you need to test. That's what you need to challenge. Because if you don't have the faith, then to go on to other things, like repentance, it doesn't mean as much to you. So that's a good question. So you did get to know my friends, I presume, the roaches and the mosquitoes and
I
things like
I
that.
did. Those cockroaches are
Yeah. Yeah. I have a nightmare of them flying at me, when you turn on the lights. As a kid, you don't think about heat and humidity. You don't even think about it because it wasn't a thing. It wasn't until I got acclimatized to air conditioning or AC that when I came back to Houston in my later years, I didn't mind ever getting relocated to England where we were, or other locations like New York where it was a little bit cooler. But as a missionary, I'm sure you felt it, all those days out tracking and riding your bike around. So that's good.
especially in the summer. Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah, summers were brutal. So tell us about those first few weeks back. This podcast began with me having a lot of conversations. I'm sure you have had similar ones with your missionaries, and some they just have a plan, they enact a plan, it just goes like clockwork. Others, far too many, I think, of the conversations, they struggle somewhat. What were those first few weeks or months back, if you could time travel just a bit?
I think the first thing that I felt, I learned to work really hard on mission, and I had a companion that was a workhorse, and he and I were companions for a number of months. And toward the end of our mission, we each went to different sides of the mission, and we try to outdo each other. And so we were working just insane amount of hours. So my first few days back from the mission was just sleep and
Recovery.
just recovery, and because we had gone at it so hard, and it was a good feeling, that feeling when you're exhausted, but for a good cause. And so I think those first few days was just recover and get mom's cooking and just feel settled again and reestablished. And I think that immediately after that, I think I grew up a lot on my mission. And you prior to mission, you feel like you've got room to play a lot, and not a lot of worries in the world. And I think my mission focused me. And so I came back and thought, you know what? It's now time to get serious about my education, and let's get going. And so I think that kicked in. Fortunately, I came home in summer, and then school started that fall. So for me, it was a fairly short window where so I didn't feel too lost. I felt like, okay, I need to get prepared and find a place to stay and get on it and then get serious about my education. So that I don't know that I had a really well formulated plan for a career and my future life, but I knew I needed to jump into the next step, which for me was school. I knew I wanted to go into business. Didn't know yet which track, but that's something that felt good to me. And from the work ethic that I developed on mission, it felt like it was ready to be channeled.
Hmm.
That channel for me was school. And so I got much better grades after mission than before. I didn't get bad grades, but I played a lot. In my first year of college at BYU Hawaii, I surfed a lot and windsurfed a lot, and then try to make sure my grades were good enough to not have my dad, rein me back in. But so I was ready to go by the time I came back from my mission.
I think that's common with missionaries, and I hope that those return missionaries listening, you did learn a lot of skills, and working hard was one of them, right? So don't stop doing that. We had missionaries that said, "Oh, I'm going to spend the next 6 months with my family." I said, "No, don't do that. Go to
Mhm.
school, go do something, trade school or university or whatever. But just keep that work ethic. Don't slow down because that's
Yeah.
one of the greatest things you learned was how to work really hard." So
It was. I felt like that has served me my entire life. And, I remember there were times later in my career we'd be working till 1 in the morning or just, feeling like we were working our guts out, and others around were going, "This is crazy." I go, "Wait, this is nothing compared to mission life." That's
yeah,
what I was thinking in my mind. You learn to work hard and get through things, and you gain an appreciation and even an appetite, I think, for
mm,
some good work that contributes, that makes a difference. And I think that moves you forward.
mm. We got back a year ago. We just had our anniversary with you, and you made a comment before that we started recording that, takes almost a year now as we get older to get to start fully recovering all the things that we did. Because it's hard work even when you're a mission leader, even though you can do things maybe that other young missionaries can't do. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, and it was great. It was really good work. So
Oh, absolutely.
okay, so you came home, you went to BYU, and you got your MBA there. I think one of the comments you made was surprisingly you didn't go to the U. It sounds like the U is also a part of your. People say you bleed, red, not blue. So why in the world would you not be a Utah fan? But anything you'd like to add there?
Well, as in my teens, I had my closest friends were all Utah fans, and we would, slam on BYU and, "Oh, I'll never go to BYU." And so it was funny, ultimately going to BYU Hawaii, BYU Provo, and getting an MBA at BYU. And it was a phenomenal education. I mean, it really was. I was
Yeah,
grateful for it. But funny how you think certain things and then life, you know, changes.
yeah, it does. It does, and and opportunities open up too. And I think it's important for people. They can still be Utah fans, but it's important that the thoughts we had when we were younger. It's okay to keep those thoughts, but maybe the Lord's going to open a door you weren't expecting. So it's okay to walk through that door and
Yeah.
find your purpose in that next step. Part of that returning was to meet your amazing companion, Stacy. I've met her before via Zoom. She is amazing. I know you married up in that context. So tell us, how do we do that? How do we marry up? I could tell you my own story, but I want to hear your story.
I I think there was something about her, she was attractive, yes, and that's a wonderful thing. There was something pure, something just light. And she's a person with no guile. She was just a beautiful soul. And I could feel that. I could sense that. And the more time we spent together, the more I discovered that and the more I loved that and appreciated that. And then I started thinking, oh my gosh, I'm starting to really like her. Like, this can't happen. This is way, way too early.
And
I'm
the plot
20.
thickens.
That can't happen. So, she was at the U, I was at BYU, and I started dating up a storm at Provo, trying to break the spell a little bit and to see if I could, kind of slow things or do something. And I'd go out with these different girls, and I'm like, oh, she's no stay. And eventually, I'm like, this just isn't going to work. And so we started dating more exclusively, kind of driving back and forth, and then we got married a year and a half after we met. I don't know exactly how it happens, but I do know that as you begin to interact with somebody, you can begin to see who they are. And
Mm,
I think for me, that light inside of her shone brightly. And I had just come off mission. She was thinking about a mission. She had just come back from going on a study abroad to Israel, which
mm,
was a spiritual high for her. And so as we shared insights and things that we learned, it just felt special. And it felt clear that she was the kind of person I wanted to be with, and who could influence me for better, and who loved the same things I loved, who the gospel of Jesus Christ mattered to her. And I felt that. And it gave me a sense of confidence and comfort with her, that I knew I could always count on her. I felt like I knew the real her, even though it took, years to really get to know somebody, but it came across pretty quickly. And I'm grateful because, some people write down lists of attributes that they're looking for, or this or that. I never did that. That seemed like a bit of a waste. But just when you're with somebody, I think you can feel who they are. And the talking, we had so many conversations, and that built, I think, a foundation of friendship that then blossomed. And by the time we got married, I was absolutely thrilled. I wasn't the least bit nervous. Nor was she. We knew it was right. And
mm.
we figured we'll figure it out. I was mostly scared about feeling the responsibility of a provider. And I realized, no, you get married, you're together, you're a team. She was working and going to school. I was working and going to school. Together, we pooled what we had, and we got through it. We lived in a little tiny basement apartment, and you figure it out. And I think it was a good lesson for me. Look to the Lord and what His timing and His recommendations are.
This is a great introduction into how to find greatness. Looks are important, obviously, but beyond that is some of the things you said. You can count on her. You knew you could count on her to be with you through it all, and you could see that the gospel mattered. You could see that her spirit radiated. It's interesting. As you were talking, I'm like mirroring my own situation. I was the same way. I came back, met this girl who, Stephanie, my future wife. I'll jump to the end there, but I needed to date. I did not want to get married. My brother was 31. I thought, okay. And my other brothers are married young. So I thought, well, I'll date. I felt almost compelled. Like, even if I found the right one, it didn't matter. I felt compelled to date. So we broke up actually for a while
Oh,
because I was really stupid until I realized I had to go back crawling for forgiveness. And, at that point, then it was just over with, right? We were done in a very short period of time. We got married, but yeah, no, I love it. For me, it was this virtuous soul, that was there. And the terminology of virtue has different meanings to different people. To me, it just meant a completeness toward her love for the gospel and her willingness to do anything. And as it's turned out, I feel very blessed that, yeah, we said yes together. We turned our keys together over all these years. Sounds like you did the same. That's great.
Yeah, I'm grateful. Boy, that it's a big decision, and it's such an important one. You as you pray like crazy, you feel that guidance,
Yeah.
and then you go.
And to give space to many, many, many of my friends who it doesn't work out the same way. I realize you realize that, that. In some ways, I just say I feel blessed and very lucky
Yeah,
that it worked out because I also know that people have those promptings and feelings and it doesn't work out the way they
yeah,
thought. And
yeah.
those are really, really hard. Okay. So we're moving forward now. You had a long-term career with OC Tanner. For whatever reason, OC Tanner is not familiar to me. I'm not from Utah, but to those here in Utah, it's more familiar to them. I think of diamonds, like mining or something like that when I think of OC Tanner. What is this company and how did it lead you now to the next step? Because will they be asking about your book that you authored as well?
Sure. It's an interesting company. Most people in Utah do think of diamonds because there is an OC Tanner jewelry store. In fact, there are two.
Mm.
It's a flagship one in Salt Lake, and then there's one in Park City. And those are actually pretty small side businesses of the company. The only reason they existed was because the founder over at C. Tanner, worked, when he was younger, he worked at a jewelry store. And he said, if I ever really make it, I'm going to build the most beautiful jewelry store in the country. And so the main business of OC Tanner is actually employee appreciation with software and awards and training to help recognize people at organizations who do great work. And so that's its principal business. It's over 800 million in revenues annually, offices all around the world, mostly serving large companies. And so if you are working at a large company and you come up with a new idea that helps improve a process or come up with a new product or save a customer or whatever it is that helps move the organization forward, many organizations have some sort of an award program, some recognition program to make sure that they go out of their way to thank that employee or the team that was involved and award them. Sometimes a president's award, sometimes a gold award, or various things to help recognize people when they do great work. And so that's what the business does. And like I say, it's got a couple of side businesses in the jewelry business.
No, I knew that only from our prior conversations, but it is surprising to me. But that does segue very nicely into the next conversation I want to have with you, and that is about this book that you authored called "The Great Work," and we'll put it in our show notes here as well. I found the free version. I apologize. Research shows that if you show love toward your employees, you're 18 times more likely to produce a higher result. So giving that feedback all the time is really important. And then these big questions that we ask ourselves, does what I do really matter? And how you can kind of answer that through this relationship you have. I know this is an elevator speech almost because we don't have time to go through the whole book, but tell us about your journey into authoring this book. And then you just went on the road speaking on these topics for a long time. So could you just kind of take us through that journey?
Sure. I enjoyed my job. As an executive vice president of the company, I was responsible for overseeing the marketing and communications and also some of the research that we were doing. And as I was driving home from work one day, I was thinking about, a lot of these big organizations spend millions and millions of dollars recognizing their people for doing great work. Why do they do that? What is it that what is it that these employees have done that warrants such a reaction from their organization to really express their thanks and appreciation? And I thought, you know what? I think we may be sitting on the world's largest database of award-winning work. The company's big and, like I say, global, and so there's literally millions of examples of work that was written up, usually by that person's supervisor or manager, to say, this is what this person did and why I think that's worthy of a president's award. And so there's quite a bit of detail in there. And I thought, what could that data tell us about how people in regular jobs all over the world do extraordinary things? How does it happen? What is this? Is there a process to it? Are there any common elements when you look across thousands of examples? Are there things people are doing? Because these are regular people in regular jobs. This isn't asking the question, how did Steve Jobs become Steve Jobs? This is most of the innovation, by the way, in the world happens on teams with regular people in regular jobs. And so I was really curious, what could that tell us if we were to really design some research to get at that? And so we took a random sample of 10,000 of these award winners. And we first tried, back then, AI wasn't very good. We first tried some machine learning techniques to see if we could derive. That wasn't super helpful. So we actually got a little team and had them read through every single one of these write-ups. Some of them were fairly lengthy, and code it based on what types of actions they took. And then we completed that work, and then we ran all kind of statistical analysis on that coding to see, are we seeing any patterns to how people innovate, how people do extraordinary things? And we started to see some really bubble up to the top very quickly. And then we augmented that with saying, okay, let's now set aside this body of research. Let's go out and do 250 interviews. And then let's do a study with Forbes. And then let's bring all of this together and see what we find. And it became really clear there are a few simple things you can do that have a high influence on your ability to make a difference, to not just make us sane. We're all used to making us sane. We get hired and we're asked to do a task and we get good at doing those tasks. But the things that bring us the greatest joy in our work are when we make a real difference that other people love, that they value. And so how do you do that? That's what has intrigued me. And so once we saw these patterns, I went to our CEO and I said, hey, this is pretty interesting stuff. I think we ought to write about this and put a book together on. He goes, go for it. So he gave us the go ahead. So it was a company initiative. And so that could give me access to some folks on our team. I couldn't quit my day job and become a full-time writer. I had a busy executive role in the company, but I had writers on our team and I had some researchers on our team. And so we were able to join together and start to do that. And then we made a bunch of interesting phone calls to do these interviews with people who had done extraordinary work. And one of my favorite ones was somebody who made a massive difference in the world, and nobody even knows his name. His name was Marty, and he was the inventor of the cell phone. And that's impacted the world I think it's one of the most remarkable inventions of the last 100 years. I mean, everything, your smartphone, everything's dependent on that technology. And, he was just this really down to earth. He was in his 80s when we interviewed him. And he was just an engineer. He said, I couldn't afford to go to school. I joined the ROTC program so I could get into college. And I became an engineer and ended up working for this little radio company called Motorola. And they gave me this assignment as I kind of moved along in the company and asked me to create a car phone. And I started working on it and went back to the CEO and said, I'm working on the wrong project. People don't want to call a car. They want to have a person-to-person call. Let's figure that out. And anyway, so he told his story. It's in the book. And it was fascinating because he was a regular guy, didn't have a big budget, didn't have the team that, could deliver something spectacular, and figured out just by asking great questions and by kind of walking through. And we saw so many of the patterns that we saw in others are what he did, along with hundreds of others, examples of people in regular jobs who chose to do something that went far beyond what they thought when they began to try to make a difference. And so those are the kinds of things that really kind of captivated us and then led us to write this out and put these thoughts down. To me, it's so refreshing to see that every one of us has the ability to make a difference. Every one of us, through the work we have in front of us, with the constraints we have, to do something that makes a difference. And I think those are our best days in whatever part of our lives. Those are our best days when we're making a difference.
Well, I'm going to put all this information in the show notes. I encourage our listeners to pick up a copy. It's such the word "a great work" is something in the church we speak of often, right? And it's really amazing that the research that has yielded pretty simple things. I mean, things that aren't very complex. That just you need to do it systematically, and you need to do it and make it part of your culture. I'm really curious how you. It's pretty easy to translate that for missionaries, obviously, but I assume that over the time you spent as a mission leader, you absolutely referenced material or, the research. You didn't just give them a book at the end of the mission.
Sometimes in our leadership meetings, I would bring in a concept or two, especially about recognition and building a culture of caring for those within your care, whether you're a district leader, or a sister training leader, or a zone leader, to express appreciation and get to know the people you're leading. So much of what I learned from the research, particularly around leadership, could help inform that. And people are coming from all different backgrounds. Most of our missionaries came from Africa, which was a wonderful experience getting to know, what were things like in Congo and Zambia and countries I had never been to, and what were their cultural expectations of leadership. And for so many, the picture of leadership was, you're the chief, you're in charge, and what you say goes, and you get to tell other people when and where to do things. And so it took quite a bit to help flip that to the Savior's way of leading as a servant, as one who's there to help lift others and love them and appreciate the successes they're having. And so I think we brought quite a few of those learnings in to a lot of the leadership conversations. I didn't do a lot of pulling some of these great work principles in, but at the end, when I would give them a copy of the book, I said, "You've been working on the greatest work of all, which is the work of salvation. Now you're going to go home and you're going to need to help provide for yourself and your future family, and you're going to go to work. And in your work, I want you to know it's not just you do stuff and you get paid. You have the ability to make a difference. And the bigger difference you can make, the more valuable you will become."
Yeah.
And how do you do that? And these are some ideas to help you in that next phase of your life. So I wouldn't let them read. I would only give the book at the final interview so that they couldn't read it on mission.
Well, of
It wasn't
course, yeah.
mission,
But I mean, chapter 6, Preach by Gospel, we talked about how well love features, right, as an attribute of the Savior Jesus Christ. And I think that it does play very well with the idea of showing appreciation and showing that people matter and giving that feedback loop often. So there's no doubt there's some influence in that, your own training, teaching, your upbringing. So maybe this is a good time to lean into your mission if we could. So you were called on a mission. None of us really know it's coming, right? So tell me about that experience for you and for your wife. And you already knew the answer before you were asked, but what was that journey like for you?
It was a surprise. We talked before about sometimes you get a little sense in your life that things might change. And I had been feeling a little, I didn't know what, but I had been feeling that the winds of change might be blowing a little bit. You don't know kind of what's coming, but it was interesting. I was sitting in my office one day, just normal work day, and my phone rings and I see it's 801-240 number, which is church headquarters. I'm like, oh, I had been released as a stake president a year and a half earlier, so I kind of knew what a 240 number looked like, and the person very sweetly said, "Hey, this is President Uchtdorf's secretary. He would like to meet with you and your wife. Could you meet with him tomorrow morning at 8:30?" And I sort of went, "Yeah, we'll find a way to make that happen." And so we went down and met with him, and he was just charming, just a wonderful man, just as you would expect. I had never met him, and uh, and he said, we just wanted to visit today and just have a little chat, and I'm going to jot down a few notes. I've just got some questions, and it doesn't necessarily go anywhere. We just want to have a conversation, and it may or may not result in a follow up, but we're just here to have a chat." So he was asking questions about how's our family and each child, and or and it was a lovely conversation. He jotted down notes, and as we left, Stacy looked at me and said, "That was such a nice visit. What a sweet man. And how nice of them just to thank us, for our service."
As stake
And I, s-
president.
and in my mind, having seen the other side of how these type of calls happen, I'm like, "Stace, we're in trouble. Like, we didn't say no to any of those questions he asked. I think there's something afoot." And sure enough, 2 weeks later, we got a call from President Oak's office saying, "Can you meet with him?" And so we did, and he extended the call to serve. And it's just your life is going along one way, as you well know, and then all of a sudden it just catapults you into a whole set of new things. And so that's how it came. Then our mission call came, and I had Stacy open it since she had not gone on a mission before. This would be her first mission, and our family was around us, and she opened the call, and it said Kenya Nairobi mission, and we just went, wow. And it was an adventure. It was an incredible experience, and rich with every dimension of life. uh, when we arrived, we went right into elections, which turned into a lot of riots and lockdowns, and getting food storage to missionaries, and just interesting things that a year earlier we had no idea we would be in the middle of. But amazing missionaries, just amazing experiences. The church is growing in Africa like crazy, and we had all of Kenya, and so we were flying east and flying west, and the roads sometimes were crazy, and we'd be in mud huts, teaching with missionaries, and in big cities, and everything in between. And it was remarkable. After 2 years, they split the mission in two, which was sad to lose half of the mission, but we felt deep gratitude because we were just going so crazy trying to cover the whole country. And then just 2 weeks ago, they split our western side into two missions. So there are now three missions. And that just gives you a sense of what's happening in Africa, which is remarkable. The Lord's hand is just over the work there. And we had an amazing experience. And earlier we talked about you're grateful for a wonderful wife and companion. And the Lord chose that companion for me, and she was the best companion I've ever had. And going through the experiences we did, boy, talk about somebody you could count on, and somebody who could handle the sometimes crazy environments and challenges and diseases and things that are just part of the work. And so anyway, you know well what that's like, but it was an incredible stretching experience. I initially felt like there's no way I can do this. It's too demanding. I had 6 districts to run in addition to the mission, and so it was stretching in every sense of the word, but remarkable to see the hand of the Lord in it.
For those who don't know, a district, when there's a district, the mission president is like the stake president in that sense. So you had 6 stakes in addition to your mission to run, and it got so large that they had to split it. That's phenomenal. And I know how you'd answer this, but how did you get the strength to do that?
It's miraculous. 3 months in, I literally said to Stacy, I don't think I will survive this mentally or physically. it is so intense. It's 95-hour weeks, and you're literally traveling all the time and trying to understand, and huge problems that are just part of the new growth, and people who are new members and new leaders. And most of our missionaries had only been members for 2 or 3 years, and so they were learning the gospel and learning the rules of missions. And so I said to her, I don't think I can survive this. Like, I have worked hard my whole career, and this is a league so far and beyond anything I've been around before. And she put her arm around me and said, you're going to make it. And we prayed hard. And one of her famous lines that I've never forgotten was when I was whining a little bit about how am I expected to do this? She looked at me and said, "Buck up, buttercup." And I realized that's exactly right. And amazingly, the Lord just gives you the energy and the ability. There's just no question. It's literally, you get this gift of strength and energy, and you're so depleted at 12 or 1 in the morning. You're just so wiped out, and you just think, I don't think I can get up tomorrow. And somehow the alarm clock goes off, and you get out of bed, and you're like, I feel pretty good. Let's go.
Just
Let's
keep
go.
going. Yeah, I think I can
And
do this.
it's amazing. And I all 100% credit is to the Lord on that. He just gives you this ability and support and miracles that solve scheduling problems in ways we could never even think about, again and again and again and again. And at every turn, we just would get on our knees and just say, thank you. There's no question whose work this is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you said that about the buck up buttercup, because I had a moment like that where I didn't even want to leave the house. I just looked at my wife, my companion, and just said, I just can't do it. I literally just felt so inadequate to go. And she just looked at me and said, "Sucks to be you. You got the tag. Let's go."
Oh, that's great.
It just, sometimes you need that powerhouse behind you just to give you a dose of reality. This is it. And, like you said, the Lord compensates, obviously, and to whom he calls, he qualifies. And we know that. And honestly, it was one of the things I missed coming home, that mantle. I was really, I'm not sad, obviously, but it was that sort of ultra reliance. And the thing I found, and you tell me if it's the same for you, but the Lord loves his missionaries. I mean, he loves his missionaries. And it's almost as if he takes your inadequacies and just says, look, just step aside for a minute. I'm going to step in. I'll take care of this because I don't really trust you in this aspect or that aspect. So you just sit back and let him, speak to you. The only thing you have to do really, really well is understand the language of the Spirit so that you know how to let that revelation flow through you. Or if it doesn't flow through you naturally, hopefully it lands on people, with the Spirit. And wow.
100%. And in some very complicated, difficult situations, either at the district level, sometimes literally lives were threatened and we had to get involved, and in some cases, missionary situations that were very tense and scary and life-threatening. And you just think, how are we going to solve this? How is this going to happen? We got a call one morning from a missionary who was just scared and saying, hey, the rioters, because riots would happen every few months, and so we kind of got used to managing that. And he said, rioters have just scaled the walls of the apartment compound. The guard ran away. We're on the ground floor. He was an American and his companion was Zimbabwean, so both foreigners. The mobs would burn down buildings and cars, and it can get really, really frightening fast. And he said, what do we do? And I said, well, one, get down on the floor, turn the lights off, stay quiet, and let's text. Keep me updated. I'm going to call area security. I call area security, and actually before we did that, we got on our knees. We were a flight away, so we couldn't get to where he was. We got on our knees and just begged the Lord for guidance. And we called area security, and this woman who's very connected in Kenya, who knows the chief of police in various areas. She said, "Oh my goodness, we got to get him out of there. This is life-threatening. I'll call the chief of police in that area." She calls me back in 10 minutes and said, "The police won't go in. We've got to get him out." I said, "Well, what are we going to do?" She said, "I'm going in." And so this beautiful African woman in her 50s with a big African dress on, who says, "I'm going in." And so she gets some motorcycle taxis, gets on one of them, gets two to follow her, calls me back and said, "Get those missionaries ready. We're going to come in and they're going to jump on the back of these bikes and we're going to try to get them out." And so, she's weaving through burning tires, whatever, gets to the compound. The missionaries get on the back and she rescues them and brings them to the mission home. And how does that happen? Those are those moments where you reach the end of what you can do. And he's miraculous. And we saw that again, and not in such life-threatening circumstances, but in so many situations, again and again, you just stand back and marvel. You just marvel and say, wow. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I took away almost every day, through difficult things and through sweet things and through marvelous things. To see the Lord's hand again and again there's nothing like it.
You're a writer, author. I hope you have some of these stories written down. I hope that this is something that you can share with those of us who just love to learn. That's an incredible story. I spent a very brief time there. I don't know where you live versus where my brother lived, but we went into this compound and they decided to do some road work and you just all of a sudden couldn't get in to where you lived. And I'm thinking, that's not right. Can we report this? Like, this is life. This is this is how it goes. And, to then have so many different, because in psychology, when you can't predict things, when things are unpredictable, your fight or flight kicks in and you're living at this high intensity in your life. And I can't imagine living 3 years of that. I mean, I just can't. I mean, no wonder you would like to take a pause for a year and sort of just get your head back around. That's amazing. I mean, our mission was hard, right? But hard is relative. And I think that's great that the Lord puts you and your amazing companion at the right place at the right time. And I'll always have that imagery of this bike with these two people following to go grab those missionaries. It's wonderful. Well, these are the stories I could sit in forever, Dave. Thank you for your time. I just can't help but just stay there for a minute and let that all soak in. I know our listeners are saying, ask this, ask this. I'm like, well, we need to let him get back to his normal life. But I do want to ask a couple of reflective questions going back to reflection. Not sure where to begin. I guess one would be, what advice would you give to a returning missionary or anyone, frankly, who is trying to navigate the different options available to them in life? What advice broadly would you give to somebody who's trying to navigate that chapter of their life?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and one that's certainly on the minds of, I think, everyone in their coming back from a mission, especially. Where do I go next? How do I navigate this? How do I pick a future career when I don't really know what I want to do yet? And is college for me? And there are so many questions. And I think they stem from trying to look out quite a ways and try to imagine ourselves in a career or in a job that we like and that can help provide for a family. And I remember I worried about that and thought about that a lot. In fact, that was probably one of the biggest impediments that caused me to not want to get married. Was I want to feel secure with a path. And even if I'm not all the way down that path, I want to see a clear picture of where I'm going so that I can kind of fill it in. I think our minds want that sense of security, even though it's not really there to be had. I think the advice I would give would be, follow your heart a little bit, follow your nose, follow where your interests lie. If you're not sure yet, jump into school and pick a few different types of topics where you think you might have some interest. And very quickly you'll go, yeah, I don't want anything to do with that. Or, ooh, this stuff's interesting to me. I find I'm naturally liking it. And that's kind of how it evolved for me. And I could never have predicted what I would be doing. I mean, I was petrified of public speaking, so much so that I forced myself to take a class at BYU in public speaking so that I could try to get over the nervousness of that. Little did I know that years and years later, in fact, decades later, I'd be speaking to over 50,000 people all over the world across a 10-year period. No, not in a million years would I have ever thought the way that things played out. And you grow into it. And so I would say, follow where your interests are, start to just go, and you'll start to feel it. And even in a job, don't get too worried. There's some careers where you really have to make a serious decision and then stick with it. If you want to be a heart surgeon, that path is very clearly laid out, and you're going to follow it, and that's what you'll do. But for most people, jobs can ebb and flow in different directions, and your interests can guide some of the opportunities that emerge in front of you. And so let it be a little bit, the old great Beatles song.
Yeah.
Just let it
Let it
be.
be.
Don't, when you're getting all nervous and worried about picking just the right major that's going to give you just the right job, just relax. It'll come. You can't see it yet, but it will come. And then let the Lord guide you. Pray a lot. You learn to pray on your mission and be guided. Seek his direction, and you'll come to different crossroads, and something will feel natural to you, and you go down that road, and then the next one pops up, and then sometimes you have to back up, and whoa, that didn't work at all, or I hate that kind of stuff. I'm gonna look for an opportunity over here. So I would say, don't get so nervous and anxious and wound up, because you cannot predict in 20 years what you're going to be doing any more than I could or you could. I mean, you just can't. So don't worry about that. Take each step a step at a time, and you will gradually navigate your way through it.
David, wow, this has been an absolute honor and treat to be with you. Thank you for giving us your time and sharing very sound advice. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. It's brought back some wonderful memories, and these questions are good to reflect on. And there's just a lot to be enjoyed in life. And I think when we all look backwards, I think we would all say, it's okay to not know where everything's going to go. I'm glad I don't know the future. And taking a step each day into your own future, I think is part of the joy of the journey.
Yeah, it really is. Well, my friend, until we meet, thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. We hope you enjoyed today's program. It is our sincere hope that you gain insights from these lived experiences of disciples of Jesus Christ as you navigate your next chapters in life. We look forward to having you join us each week for the unfolding chapters of our guests. Remember to follow us on Instagram at RMNextChapters for announcements and updates. Also, you can visit us on our website at rmnextchapters.com, where you can listen to each podcast directly or link to your favorite podcasting platform. As always, if you have any thoughts or feedback, we'd love to hear it. Please send them to sid@rmnextchapters.com. See you soon.